Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to today's event, where we gather to present and discuss the second edition of the report on the performance of European partnerships, also known as the Biennial Monitoring Report, or BMR. This report is the second out of 4 editions that will be prepared under Horizon Europe and offers a systematic overview of the European partnerships landscape. Let me first of all explain to you the general structure of the event. Today, we will present key findings of the report, followed by a panel that will discuss the contribution of the European partnerships to EU priorities and the BMR as a monitoring tool. Welcome and thank you all for joining us here today. Moving on to the second edition of the BMR, without going into too much detail, as I will leave that to the experts and panelists. This year's BMR is by default extra special as it is published in the year during which we celebrate 20 years of partnerships. Partnerships have contributed substantially to structuring the European research area, and I'm fascinated to see how partnerships have become one of the most important instruments of Horizon Europe. Their crucial role is very clear when reading the BMR. By pooling and mobilizing resources towards common objectives, European partnerships are also at the heart of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Partnerships, as the word also indicates, are a great instrument that allows the EU to team up with both public and private partners to respond to EU's key policy objectives. The EU invests significantly into partnerships with a current estimated 24.9 billion euros, so close monitoring of their performance and impact is important. In this context, the Biennial Monitoring Report aims to provide a strong evidence base to guide the implementation of partnerships and to inform strategic discussions on the effectiveness of the new policy approach to European partnerships and how it should evolve. While the previous BMR was written in the early stages of Horizon Europe, this year's BMR includes more concrete first results achieved in the past 2 years, fostering additionality, triggering additional actions and investments, aligning national and regional policies under a common strategic research and innovation agenda, and enhancing collaborations and synergies. In addition to their contribution to the green and digital transition, this year's edition looks at the partnership's role in technological sovereignty and international positioning. In short, I can assure you that reading this report will provide a clear and substantive understanding of the European partnerships landscape and their contributions to our shared European objectives. This second BMR notably provides highly valuable and evidence-based input for discussions on the next framework program for research and innovation, FP10 as we call it. I'm already looking forward to the next BMR that will come in 2 years and will provide even more insights into the role of European partnerships in bringing together the related communities and addressing the complex challenges of our time. I would like to express special thanks to the 9 experts of the Independent Commission Expert Group for their work in drafting the report, and of course also to my Commission colleagues that have supported them and coordinated the process. Lastly, I would like to highlight that this report is the result of an intense exchange and collaboration between the Commission, the Expert Group, the Member States and associated countries, and the European partnerships. Many thanks to the 30 countries and 44 European partnerships that have provided input and data to the report. I would also like to extend my thanks to today's speakers who have traveled to Brussels to present and discuss the report in greater depth. Now, without further ado, I will pass the floor to Marion Jamard from the European Partnerships Unit here in DG Research and Innovation and the responsible policy officer for the BMR. She and 3 experts of the expert group will present the key findings of the report. I wish you a nice event and a great afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the launch of the Biennial Monitoring Report on the performance of European partnerships. I would like to renew Fabienne's thanks to the 9 experts and the members of the expert group on support of the strategic coordinating process for their collective work and their expertise. Could I please have the slide with the names of the experts? Thank you. So these are the 9 experts who worked very hard in the past year in developing the report that is out today. Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about the agenda of today. So as mentioned by Fabienne, we will have a first session for an hour about to present you with the key findings of the report. And this we will have afterwards a follow-up on the questions and answers with our panel following your reactions. After that, we will have a quick 15-minute coffee break, and it will be followed by a panel discussion on the report with the chair of the expert group, a representative from the Partnership Knowledge Hub, a representative from a co-funded partnership, and a representative from a co-program partnership. Throughout this event, you will have the opportunity to comment and ask questions using Slido. And in order to connect to Slido, you can use the QR code that is appearing on the screen or the hashtag BMR24. Please do not hesitate to share your comments and questions with us with the Slido. So let us now dive into the presentation of the key findings of the report. And I have with me today 3 members of the expert group, Efi Amenatidu, Dubravka Shkunsa, and Michael Dooms, who will be each presenting some key findings. And I will actually start myself on the main policy conclusions of the report. Next slide, please. So I would like first to recall the role of the BMR in the strategic coordinating process, as it provides a strong evidence in order to guide the implementation of European partnerships, but also to inform the strategic discussions on their effectiveness and potentially on how they should evolve in the future. So this is why the BMR actually provides a systematic analysis and overview of the entire partnership landscape. It analyzes whether they are more successful in achieving their objectives than the classic Horizon Europe calls. They're looking into their impacts and monitoring their progress individually, collectively, but also at the European level as well as at the national level. The report also aims at identifying barriers or drivers of their impact. And finally, as partnerships mature, the consecutive editions will more and more report on their results. Next slide, please. Let me now present or recall the structure of the BMR that is out today. A first chapter on introduction, recalling the rationale of European partnerships, providing an overview of the entire portfolio, and describing the strategic coordinating process. The second chapter provides insights on the contribution of European partnerships. It is structured around the common indicators that are used in order to analyze their performance. And also this chapter provides an overview of the contribution of partnerships to European priorities. And additionally, in this edition, two new thematics, which are international positionings and the technical sovereignty. The third chapter looks at how partnerships are at country level in terms of participation and of impact, but also provides country fishes. And finally, the fourth chapter provides a profile of each individual partnership and via country fishes, and provides also an analysis of their monitoring frameworks. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of the partnership portfolio in Horizon Europe as it currently stands. So partnerships are actually identified as a part of the Horizon Europe strategic planning process. And it goes with two distinct, this process has two dimensions. First, ensuring that the proposals comply with the selection criteria that are listed in the Annex 2 of the Horizon Europe regulation. And the second dimension is led by strategic discussions on what are the needs and what are the priorities in terms of thematic, and also ensuring that the selected thematic in order to construct this portfolio are coherent with one another, for instance, avoiding overlap. So this leads us to 49 partnerships, which were the results of the first strategic plan. The addition of Prima, which was continued, so bringing it to 50, and an additional 9 that resulted from the Horizon Europe, second Horizon Europe strategic planning process. So we have a total here of 59 partnerships. So looking at this portfolio, what do we notice? We actually notice that there is a stable core of partnerships, which is resulting from partnerships that are based on predecessors in former framework program. And we actually note 10 of them are brand new thematics, for instance, textiles or pandemic preparedness or cultural and creative industry sectors and ecosystems. Sorry. It is this kind of shows us that it is actually difficult to either terminate or reshape or replace these thematics, and we have a strong legacy, which kind of leads to a mushrooming of these initiatives, and it leads us to a portfolio that is still considered today as too crowded. Next slide, please. Let's now dive into some key figures of the budget commitments to European partnerships. Almost 40 billion of investment are poured into from other partners other than the Union into partnerships, or are envisaged at this point for the entire duration of the partnership. On the EU side, its contribution are estimated at almost 25 billion, which corresponds to 26% of the budget, the entire budget of Horizon Europe, and 39.6% of the budget of Pillar 2, recalling the budget cap of 49.9 of Pillar 2. So, and these numbers concern the partnerships resulting from the first strategic plan only, to be updated at the next edition with the second wave of partnerships. Next slide, please. So one of the indicators of partnerships is called additionality, and an important dimension of additionality is leverage. We call leverage the additional private or public R&I investment, which is generated by the EU contribution to European partnerships. And this leads to a leverage effect, or can be translated, in a leverage effect, resulting from the EU intervention. And the objective is to multiply the initial EU funding in order to achieve a greater impact on its objectives. So looking at the numbers that we have here, what does it mean in practice, this leverage? It means that for a partnership project call, €1 invested by the EU actually triggers the investment of 52 cents from other sources of partnership. And this is quite important to notice, that it is considerably more important or higher investment from other sources compared to classic Horizon Europe calls. Looking at partnership level leverage, so not just the call, but then the entire partnership, calls and additional activities, €1 invested by the EU will trigger across partnerships on average 1.63 euros from other sources across all types. And if we dive into each type of partnership, it will trigger 2.17 for co-funded partnerships, 1.39 for co-programmed, 1.44 for JUs and Article 185 initiatives, and 2.39 for the KICs. These conclusions are actually very important because they show that European partnerships have a tremendous potential to trigger great co-funding from partners other than the Union, and this conclusion is actually very relevant given the revived interest and attention that is given to the 3% investment objective. Next slide, please. And I will finish my part of the presentation with the slides summarizing the contribution of partnerships to the twin green and digital transition, as well as the resilience. The report shows that 36% of the full budget of partnerships is dedicated to objectives related to resilience. 38% is directed towards objectives related to the digital transition, and finally 75% of the full budget of partnerships are contributing to the objectives of the Green Deal. And these translate as well into the mapping of the main societal development goals, which are addressed by partnerships. And you have the 5 main ones here in order of importance: industry, innovation, and infrastructure first, then climate action, good health and well-being, decent work and economic growth, and finally, responsible consumption and production. Thank you very much. So on this note, I will end here my presentation. And before I pass the floor to Effie, I would like to remind those who have just joined us, to not hesitate to comment and ask their questions in the Slido. Can I have please the Slido codes and QR code? Voilà, and the hashtag, thank you, for you to connect and share your comments and questions. On this note, let me give the floor to Effie, who will provide a presentation on the portfolio level analysis of European partnerships. Effie, over to you.
Thank you, Marion. As the slide shows, the portfolio analysis consists of 5 themes, which we are going to talk with a little bit of more detail in the next slides. If we move on to the next one, additionality. It complements the leverage effect analysis that Marion just presented. When partnerships were asked in the Common Indicator Survey about which type of additional activities they triggered without necessarily being in the core program, the partnerships responded a variety of activities. Mainly, they were referring to national level efforts and activities targeting the scaling up of project results or following up projects, possibly using additional funding sources like ERDF or the ESIF funds. Then they also reported capacity building activities, and also they reported valorization activities of the project results. And this is primarily important for institutionalized and co-program partnerships. They also talked about outreach activities or dissemination activities, and some other types like the additional calls they may have launched without the EU support. Besides these answers, the country fishes provided also several examples of additional activities triggered by their participation in partnerships. For example, Belgium reported a follow-up of RNA projects or the sustainability that they achieved for certain partnerships. Austria mentioned the launch of national RNI missions, very much compatible to the EU missions. Germany mentioned the creation of complementary national programs, especially in the health sector, targeting cancer research. Netherlands reported an extra funds that they used to support their participation in co-funded partnerships. Turkey, they created a national support program to allow them to participate in Eurostars 3, and several countries reported the creation of national coordination structures to allow them to improve their evidence-based decision-making in which partnerships they are joining and how they implement. Now, if we go to the next slide, we see the second theme about the portfolio analysis, which is directionality. And before we talk about we complement what Marion has already said about the contribution of partnerships to the European policy goals, we want to make the point that alignment is really a very decisive factor improving or strengthening directionality. And when we're talking about alignment, we mean the level of convergence of the national policies and priorities among themselves and together with the European policies and strategies. And during the 20 years of partnership's existence, we see a significant level of alignment. Countries are creating missions. Countries are also using similar frameworks to their national programs, similar to the framework programs, and also they are using priorities which are very much compatible to European priorities. And also partnerships have created a variety of structures that they are supporting the discussions and the decision-making in order to improve their alignment, like Agora dialogues, like state representative groups, and so on. And in this discussion, we should not neglect the role of the regions, which is increasingly becoming important. Encouragingly, there are very good examples already existing about involving the regions in partnerships, like the previous Clean Sky 2 initiative that decided that they signed memorandum of understandings with several European regions, and they plan to build on that as well, or the EIT Regional Innovation Scheme. Now, as Marion said, when partnerships were asked about what is the share of their budget that they target to mobilize towards EU priorities, the Green Deal came on top, irrespectively of the type of the partnership, whereas the digital transition was mostly cited by institutionalized and co-programmed, and the economic and societal resilience was cited by institutionalized and co-funded. If we go to the next slide, transparency and openness has been in the partnership discussion for a number of years now. And encouragingly, most of the partnerships stated and reported concrete examples of measures that they have taken to increase the participation of end users and the private sector entities and beneficiaries, as well as the less represented countries in their memberships. Another very encouraging fact is that this theme is reflected in the key performance indicators in most of the partnerships, 35 out of the 43 that responded to the survey. Now, openness is translated to the newcomers. And we had 25 partnerships that responded to the two common indicator surveys back in 2022 and in 2024. Analyzing their responses, we see a significant increase of new organizations, mostly SMEs and private entities, which is associated mainly with the institutionalized partnerships and the co-programmed ones. So this is another encouraging factor. And we see here the numbers that do not really add up because the co-funded partnership presented a slight decrease in their members. But of course, these figures need to be taken into account with caution, as it is only 25 of the partnership that we had comparable data. Now, another two very important findings is that the newcomer countries beyond Europe, besides the ones that were there for the partnerships in the previous BMR, like US, like Canada or Israel, we have additional beyond non-European countries, Australia, Brazil, Egypt, Georgia or Kosovo. And the second interesting point is the widening countries, which showed an increase in their participation, some of them even above 30%. When we go to the next slide, we are talking about synergies. Now, synergies have been defined in a number of ways. In the BMR, we studied them at 4 levels: among the partnerships, between the partnerships and the missions, between partnerships and EU programs, as well as between partnerships and EU funding sources. And across the two BMRs, we see a clear shift from the planning of synergies to implementing them. There are very many good examples of creating synergies. And of course, in the meantime, there have been quite important policy discussions and also publications like the Prague Declaration. Still, synergies remain mostly informal. As we see here, capacity building exercises, visibility, networking, dissemination, strategic exchanges, and so on. And based on the responses in the Common Indicator Survey, we see that in the co-funded partnerships, there are less synergies reported with other European programs. There are several reasons for this. some people say that it's still early days for the co-funded partnerships, or they reported that synergies may have existed at the project level, which the central management of the partnerships might not know about. Nonetheless, several other European programs were cited by European partnerships as very relevant to create links or already having created links with them, as we see here. And besides the Digital Europe program or the Connecting Europe facility, which might have been usual suspects, we also see Erasmus Plus or LIFE that come forward. The examples of synergies now with EU funding sources, like the ESSI funds, is another story. Although there are good examples starting to appear, there is still a long way to go. And I think that this is a general conclusion, that still synergies need a long way to go at all the levels of connections with the European partnerships, and especially with the missions. Now, going to the next slide, about the country participation, there are many interesting findings, but we selected 3 of the most key findings. And as Marion mentioned before, among the contributions made by other than the union actors, the 15 billion out of the 38, they come from the member states and the associated countries. And this is almost 3 times the 5.5 billion that were committed by countries to calls in Horizon 2020 partnership since 2014. The second very important finding is that between Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, certain countries, all of which come from the widening group, they doubled or tripled their share of participation. The streamlining between H 2020 and Horizon Europe seems that have benefited these countries in their decision making. And third, last but not least, there are so many more concrete examples of impact cases that range from the policy domain to infrastructure creation to startups and innovation. To name but a few, this is the Resourcify, which is the European leading digital platform in waste management that was supported by EIT Climate and then EIT Raw Materials, or the Hydrogen Valley that was created in Luxembourg, or the supercomputers created in several countries, among them the Vega supercomputer in Slovenia that was supported by EuroHPC. And with this, I pass it back to you, Marion.
Thank you very much, Effie, for your presentation. Now I would like to pass the floor to Dubravka, who will present about the key findings related to the 2 special thematics of this edition, technological sovereignty and international positioning. Over to you, Dubravka.
Thank you very much. Regarding thematic content of Biennial Monitoring Report 2024, we had 3 subchapters which were the same as for the previous BMR, Green Digital Transition and Resilience, and we also have added 2 new subchapters, Technological Sovereignty and International Positioning. On one side, the EU has a strong position in industrial research and development, automobile information, communication technology, health sectors, but also in advanced manufacturing and materials. But it should reduce dependencies in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, cloud computing, robotics and microelectronics, big data, and secure communications. Next slide, please. So if we examine the definition of technological sovereignty, there are 3 key elements: technological, economic, and regulatory element. Technological element is related to the maintaining research and development competencies by maintaining strong knowledge base, industry and networks in critical technologies. Economic element is related to the key enabling technologies, which are artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing and materials, micro and nanoelectronics and photonics, security and connectivity, and life science technologies. And the regulatory element is related to development of the policies which are aiming to influence global regulation and standards and practices that reflect European values. And all these 3 elements are connected to the definition of technological sovereignty, which is related to the ability for Europe to act independently in a globalized environment, and of course to develop, provide, protect, retain critical technologies required for well-being of European citizens and also for the prosperity of businesses. Next slide, please. On the left figure, we can see answers that partnerships from all clusters gave when asked how relevant is European technological sovereignty for your partnerships. And on the right figure, we can see cluster 4 answers on the same question. And it's important to mention that cluster 4 also included EIT Digital, EIT Raw Materials, and EIT Manufacturing partnership answers. So here it's established that the vast majority of cluster 4 partnerships are considering European technological sovereignty as highly relevant for them, which makes cluster 4, digital industry and space, key cluster which is enabling technological sovereignty. And this was also mirrored in the answers they gave in partnership fishes. And partnerships from this cluster 4 are actually developing key enabling technologies for the future. Next slide, please. On this slide, we can see several examples of several partnerships from the cluster 4, digital industry and space, and some of their key performance indicators related to technological sovereignty. Regarding artificial intelligence, data and robotics partnerships, this is the partnership that is actually aiming to secure technological sovereignty for Europe by developing AI technologies, also by skill building artificial intelligence skills and technological transfer from research to small and medium enterprises. Smart Networks and Services Partnership is actually facilitating European technological sovereignty by securing a 5G cybersecurity toolbox and also with their KPIs, key performance indicators related to the high-risk research funding and SME innovation. Then if we go to photonics partnership, they are developing core photonics technology platforms as their way to support sovereignty of Europe. And the key performance indicators are connected to the access to risk capital and cross-cutting digital innovation hubs. And for the fourth example, which is EIT Digital, they are supporting the technological sovereignty of Europe by upskilling talents, investment in ventures, and also by supporting startups, scale-ups, and digital industry, but also digital well-being in digital cities. Next slide, please. When we were elaborating the topic regarding international positioning, we have explored the topics about research and innovation in European partnerships, also how European partnerships are fostering collaboration with non-European countries and global leaders, and also benefits that partnerships have from research and innovation collaborative agreements with non-European countries. Next slide, please. So here we can see on the first table percentage of the overall budget partnerships from all clusters are planning for collaboration with non-European actors, while on the second table we can see a cluster 1 partnership also including EIT Health. Percentage of the overall budget they are planning for collaboration with non-European actors, and it actually can be concluded that cluster 1 partnerships are the partnerships which are enabling international positioning, and this is the key cluster, has the highest percentage of overall budget planned for collaboration with non-European actors. Next slide, please. So here are some KPIs which are relevant for international positioning in cluster 1 health. If we examine global health, we can see that 100% of their overall budget is actually planned for collaboration with non-European actors, meaning the maximum amount possible. And they are investing in research and innovation and training in sub-Saharan Africa. What they are also doing is facilitating the rapid translation from research to policy in a way that they are supporting initiatives and establishing links with ministries of health, important initiatives, and on the other hand, on the other side, Africa Center for Disease Control and the World Health Organization office in Africa. Innovative Health Initiative is planning 20% of their overall budget for collaboration with non-European actors, and their relevant key performance indicators are related to the project outputs that they are using in clinical practice and health research and innovation, and also globally competitive in EU healthcare industry. And if we examine the last example from the cluster 1 health, this is the partnership transforming health and care systems. and their key performance indicators, such as joint investments in research and innovation, collaborative research, are facilitating international positioning, and they are actually dedicating 10% of their overall budget for collaboration with non-European actors. Thank you very much, and I give floor back to Maria.
I would like to again give the opportunity to maybe those who joined us on the way to get a chance to have the Slido code right here with the and to connect to Slido with the QR code or the hashtag BMR24 in order to provide to comment or ask any question you may have. And on this note, I will give the floor to Michael for his presentation on the individual performance of European partnerships.
Thank you, Mario. Yeah, it's of course we don't have the time to go into the detail of all the individual partnerships. It's 40 plus of the fishes. So we'll give an overall view of what the results from our exercise mean for the general program, I would say, and I think the future monitoring as well. First of all, yeah, thanks to all the partnerships, because this partnership fish obviously is also a big cornerstone and requires quite a lot of work by the partnerships to accomplish this exercise. The exercise really provides for each partnership a harmonized, visually attractive, concise fish, which actually allows also a high degree of accessibility to non-experts to really discover the storyline, the objectives, and also the performance of the partnership. It has 5 pages, which serve as an identikit. The first one, the partnership-specific impact pathway, which is the intervention logic, but also presented in a harmonized way. Then the KPI tables with selected indicators, some examples linked to the thematic areas of concrete realizations, and then of course also the geographical spread and information about the membership. Important to note here is that the indicators mentioned, they are a selection, so it's really the most strategic one that are reported, but they're not exhaustive. You could go to websites of partnerships to their impact reports and you will discover more indicators, and also the fishes provide those links for you to also access more information. Next slide, please. So what is the status of these partnership fishes today? We stabilized the framework in relation to 2022. It's a promise we made and we kept. It still gives a very good impression, but we feel some widening gap between what we would call best in class. We have a high maturity, and then some lagging partnerships which have lower maturity and are maybe a bit less performance culture driven. And that's an important attention point. We see that still a lot of partnerships, they have indicators for with baselines missing, with also targets missing, and we really want to point that if we want a real monitoring exercise next time, we would need completed fishes. I think that's very important. On the level of the KPIs, also putting a real performance next to the targets. There are some partnerships who are able to do that already in this exercise, but of course we wanted to have a harmonized view, but also with the clear objective that next time there will need to be, and it's in the short run, this additional effort. And of course, I think there's a lot of support that can be given to be able to achieve that. So we really activate the monitoring component also in this part of the report. Next slide, please. So while we couldn't really assess the real performance or make any aggregated analysis of the indicators themselves, we reverted to a content analysis based on the nature of the reported KPIs. We also think that given the public nature of them, they are very significant for the partnerships. So if we aggregate them, we can get a good view on the directionality, I would say, of the indicators reported. And I think the previous speakers already also gave an idea on certain categories which were highlighted or which are very frequently reported. We did 2 content analysis, one based on 5 areas coming out of the literature. 5 dimensions: innovation and research output, impact on policy and society, collaboration and network, resource utilization, efficiency, and capacity building and skills development. So we basically analyzed each indicator and assigned it to one of the categories, and then based on a harmonized statistical exercise, we were able to develop some heat maps where the different types of partnerships put the weight on in terms of indicators. We also did the same for the key impact pathways, which make part also of the monitoring of the Horizon Europe framework as a whole. So we'll just on the next slide show you some results of this. Obviously what you see is it's research innovation partnerships, so there is a lot of emphasis in the KPIs on innovation and research output. So it's not a problem that these 5 perspectives are not balanced per se, although you would probably expect that also, for example, impact indicators should probably towards the future get even more attention. We also see some differences emerging in terms of the type of partnership. For example, the co-funded ones, they are more focused also on collaboration and network expansion, which given the nature of these partnerships also seems to be logical. So a few of the conclusions of this analysis actually come forward as quite natural, on a one-to-one basis to the dimension. But also there, not a lot of surprises, a lot of focus on the scientific impact in the different type of partnerships, with the co-funded also showing there a higher intensity. Some other marked differences there, where institutionalized partnerships in general, and I think it's logic given their maturity, probably show a more balanced approach in terms of developing the indicators. Co-programmed partnerships are a bit less oriented on technological and economic impacts, which might be a little bit strange given also the industry component, but then again you have to drill down on what are the dimensions really in the key impact pathways, and do they really represent the full stack of these impact indicators. You're also bound there by the framework which is used. Next slide, please. So to conclude, as said, there are some logical differences if you look at the orientation of KPIs reported in the BMR on the fishes. Of course, and that's a big challenge, and it's also reflected in the other work of the expert group, which is about impact indicators. We see that it's a tough exercise to have causally linked and scientifically valid indicators or impact indicators. It's very costly also, so it requires attention. And then again, I will repeat myself, 2026, the next report will really be pivotal for this chapter, because we really would urge the partnerships to really complete all the missing information on the fishes, especially if it's about the targets on the different horizons put forward of the different indicators. So that's really something where we did something magical with these fishes, I think last time, and also this time it's a tedious exercise, but I think next time we can certainly put the bar a bit higher. And with that message, I would conclude the presentation of the BMR. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. That indeed concludes our presentation on the key findings of the report, and that lets us to open the Q&A based on your Slido answers. So let me quickly go through the questions that we have received. So we have a question on the synergies that are challenging to achieve in an overly complex European ecosystem, and whether the European Commission could guide these interactions. Would you like to take this question, Effie?
Yes, surely. I would cite some respondents in our survey and some recommendations that were put forward, saying that there needs to be a strategy about how to create synergies and with which structures and programs and funding sources as an integral part of the partnerships management. So I think that this recommendation was put forward by the partnerships themselves, and also the European Commission was also cited in this in order to facilitate the discussions and the spaces to create dialogues among the different instruments, besides some of such initiatives that are already taking place among the partnerships, a thematic discussion fora, but also more formal spaces and strategies to be developed by the partnerships with the help of the European Commission to facilitate this. I think it is a very important role that the Commission can play.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Effie. Moving on to another question. We received the question on whether there are any elements that we would like to zoom in into during the next BMR, and whether there was any partnerships that stood out to you and why. Michael, would you like to give a first start, and then maybe if anyone will come in as well?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to say, you know, if a partnership stands out. I think what I've personally learned, I think the last few years, there's now the second exercise where I had the pleasure to be involved, is that of course all these partnerships, there are different stages of a life cycle. Some of them are indeed new. They have to build up resources and competences in terms to, for example, do the monitoring. Also some sectors or some industrial-driven partnerships, they have more this approach like we want to see impact. It doesn't show in our aggregated analysis, but surely there are some examples which are really, really good in terms of defining the right indicators with good causalities, because they come from industry where you have this kind of culture of, strong culture of measurement. One of the elements I would personally put in there is that if you look at the portfolio as a whole, I think somehow you should probably define somewhat different frameworks and expectations for partnerships at different stages of life cycles, where you say, okay, for some partnerships which are, for example, they're mature, they're industry linked, they're very focused in a certain industry, you can expect that there is a very strong focus on impact measurement, in my opinion. Whereas partnerships that are just starting, which are maybe a bit broad in focus, I think there you probably say, okay, listen, don't spend too much time in, impact measurements, but make sure that you have a very good measurement at outcome level or at output level. And this is something really that should be discussed. You put the bar as high for everybody, but you tune a bit in terms of like, what do you really want to see, given the specific context, life cycle, sector, type of partnership that is being operated. I think that would really also, drive them towards more effectiveness. If you look at the question, another question which is posed here.
If I can also add something regarding thematic focus and the partnerships that I would select, it would definitely be regarding technological sovereignty, artificial intelligence, data and robotics partnerships, because in their strategic research and innovation agenda, they have definitely claimed that their main aim is securing and enabling European technological sovereignty, and on the other hand, for international positioning, definitely global health, and they are actually dedicating the entirety, 100% of their overall budget for the collaboration with non-European actors. So regarding these two topics that I have explored. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dubravka. We have a question regarding the Draghi report, whether it was mentioning that it was rather critical on the effectiveness of partnerships in Horizon Europe, and whether this conclusion corresponds to our finding. Maybe I will start and just mentioning or recalling the findings that we have in terms of leverage, and that actually when we compare the leverage of European partnership compared to other traditional instruments or traditional call for projects in Horizon Europe, we do find that partnerships are a very effective instrument in fostering co-investments from partners other than the Union Union. So in this case, I would say that this is rather a very positive point and very good strength of your partnerships in Horizon Europe. Would anyone like to comment on the different aspects?
Well, maybe very quickly. I think if the report is critical, obviously from what I've understood, there was some benchmarking done, I think, especially with North America, also and the US, and how research innovation is handled there. But I think it's a different way of looking at innovation systems, and also the way you set up a program, which is really focused on big silos revolving around technologies. Whereas in Europe, we have a more distributive way of handling things, not only revolving on only technological pillars in the research system, but also allowing sectors to form a partnership and so on. So for me, it's difficult to say, like, is it more effective or not? On the other hand, of course, you see in the US a higher performance in terms of number of spin-offs, number of new companies, unicorns, and so on. And I think there, obviously, if you talk about effectiveness, I think here in the partnerships, probably you need to look also critically at certain indicators in terms of being able to also put this next step of valorization on economic point forward. And this is where also you see in the impact indicators, and that's where the analysis of the partnership fishes comes forward. There's not a lot on this kind of impacts, and probably it's kind of a point to look towards more intensively the next period.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone would like to come in on that one question? Okay, then another question, because we still have 5 minutes. The number of partnerships and repartition between the three categories. So I assume those are the categories, the three types of partnerships. What are your recommendations for the future? 50, is it about a good figure? Do you expect less? I don't know. We don't know yet what particularly a good figure might be. We do find that 59 at this point is quite an extensive partnership still, despite the exercise of reform and rationalization that already was quite drastic between Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, between 120 to about half of it now. But there is actually, and I would like to maybe then open the floor for that there, the expert group on supporting the strategic coordination process has actually developed a methodology in order to kickstart a systematic analysis in order to develop and to inform the development of a partnership portfolio in line with as well foreseen areas of needs and where partnerships would be selected or would be considered as the best response to these needs. And they have developed a systematic methodology in order to support to do that. Would you like to come in a little bit to talk about that methodology briefly?
Yes, maybe I start and you can complement. As you said, this methodology addressed a particular way that the partnership landscape can be analyzed and recommendations can be produced in order to say whether the partnership instrument is the right instrument to address specific gaps in terms of research priorities, specific research fields. And the selection process has been under discussion for quite some time now, and we believe that in view of FP10, we believe that the selection process will be enriched with more evidence, more analysis as possible, in order to identify, as you said, also the existing gaps vis-a-vis also foreseen emerging very important issues in the scientific and technological domain. And I don't think that a number is the end point here. It's the fact that it will be the level to which we decide to cover the existing gaps in the best way through partnerships or not. So that would be my answer.
Yes, indeed. And actually, another point, and this actually links to the fact that in the current portfolio, we do see a lot of legacy from previous initiatives, that we also see that it's very difficult for a new thematic to emerge within this already compared to already mature partners or very always very organized ecosystems. So that would compensate the currently mainly bottom-up exercise with a top-down dimensions, looking at what are the needs to complement with what is the interest, and then match the two in order to facilitate as well the entry of new partnerships. Michael?
Yeah, I want to also offer a perspective which has more corporate point of view, if you would see it really as a portfolio. And when I look at the whole portfolio, I think somehow the incremental nature with which it develops, I think somehow you need to break the logic at some point, because otherwise it's going to grow and grow and grow, which I'm not particularly keen on seeing, I think, because then you reach the opposite of what you actually wanted to achieve with these partnerships. I take, for example, circularity. You know, you can already name like 5 or 6 partnerships which are dealing with that, and probably the textiles for the future. I haven't read what they're thinking about, but textiles is also a big player in circular economy more and more. And there you have to really at some point think like, okay, you know, should you not define then a big partnership only around circularity and put the people together or the partnerships together in terms of, you know, how can we then pool and assign the resources better, because I cannot, undo myself from the impression that there's quite some overlap.
No, indeed. So better defining what like partnership thematic is, like how granular or how broad might it be, and in order as well, and I think that maybe links to the question on the Draghi report or the effectiveness. Of course, we recognize that these partnerships are quite heavy constructions and have which includes, of course, costs for running them. And maybe we would also gain in efficiencies if we would have this partnership like a bit less narrow in terms of thematic and a bit broader, bringing together related issues in order to avoid overlap, but also like increase synergies. On this point, actually, I see that it is 4 o'clock. So let me thank all of you for your presentations and for your answer to the questions of the audience, and of course to the audience. This is not over yet. We're just taking a 15-minute break before the event starts again with a panel discussion. Voilà. Thank you very much, and see you in 15 minutes.
Hello, and welcome back after this coffee break. I hope you had a nice coffee. I also hope you found the first session very interesting. Let me first present myself. My name is Marnik Surgeon, and I'm the Deputy Head of Unit of DG RTD's unit that manages and coordinates the European partnerships. We'll now have a panel discussion, let's say, not about the content of the report itself, but more about the role it plays in the partnership landscape. But before we do that, I would like to take a minute to once again congratulate colleagues that produced the report, in particular Marion Jamar, whom you saw in the previous session, and Lucas, who brilliantly put together this event. But also, I mean, the experts that contributed, the partnerships that contributed with data, and also the member states that contributed with data. So let's now move to our panel discussion. And let me briefly introduce the panelists to you, let's say from left to right. First, we have Daria Julkowska, who was actually the chair of the expert group that helped us prepare the report, but who is also very active in the partnership landscape and is, if I'm not mistaken, the coordinator of the rare diseases partnership. Next to her is Katrien Angel Hansen, who is chair of the General Assembly of the Sustainable Blue Economy partnership, a partnership that is, I think, co-coordinated between Norway and Italy, if I'm not mistaken, a co-funded partnership as well. So Daria is also active in co-funded partnerships. Then we have Rika Virkkunen, who is co-chair of the Made in Europe partnership, that is a co-programmed partnership. So there we have a different perspective. And then finally, at the end, is Rune Vistad, who is Director of International Cooperation at the Norwegian Research Council. Rune, I don't know if you're involved in any particular partnerships or you do probably more of the...
Individual, of course, we have a special heart in the blue economy, as we are being co-chairs, but no, but I'm a member of this Partnership Knowledge Hub.
Well, I think in some way or another, you're all members or observers in the Partnership Knowledge Hub, so we have a whole lot of experience in European partnership combined in this panel. So without further ado, let us move to the first question, and I'm gonna ask you two questions and let each of you respond in turn, and then maybe do some follow-up questions. And let's hope that we will still have the time for a third question as well. We'll also see whether any questions from the audience come in. So I would also like to repeat for the audience, don't hesitate to submit a question on the Slido. They come on our screen and then we can try to answer them. So first question, and maybe Rune, I'm gonna ask you to go first. We've seen a presentation of the main messages of the biennial monitoring report in the previous discussion. Now for you, for each of you, the report as a whole, what role does it play in the European partnership landscape? And then in particular, in your role in that, how useful is it? What about it is very useful? What do you use? What don't you use? How could it be better? So really a question on the role and the value of the report itself. So Rune, can I ask you to go first?
Thank you. But first of all, like you, I would like to say that this expert group has really made a commendable work putting together this very comprehensive report. It's long. It's 530 pages and more. But it's also very analytical. So it's a really good report. I normally don't say that I enjoy reading such reports, but this was actually, it was a good read. So I shall not say that I've read every sentence, but I've gone through it, and it's actually very good. And I think it's important because it helps us to sort of see the bigger picture. It's useful when it comes to national policy development and priorities, because we can both see sort of the European developments, but also the national, and we can see how the individual countries are faring comparing to other nations. So I think this is a very good feature, and we also, what we're talking about synergies, because the expert group said something about synergies just before the break. And this is, of course, important to our countries, that we actually work in a most efficient way. So we can, through this report, see where are there synergies, where are there possibilities for synergies. We can use that also at the national level. So I think that this will be a good tool for the national administrations in the way forward. Actually, I would have liked the report to come even earlier, because now we are, if you remember the 59 partnership, there were some red lines around some of them, which are now sort of up for consideration, and we are discussing currently how much we are going to lean in to the different partnerships, and it would actually have been, useful to have this report in that respect. Of course, there is still time, so we are going to feed it in immediately, because this report actually demonstrates that the partnerships, to a large extent, work as they are intended. It's an efficient way to work. So in that respect, it's very useful. And I think, to conclude from my side, it's just rather a plea for the next report, because there's 2 more coming up, and perhaps we could consider to have a summary in the next report, and perhaps also some key findings, because I think that would make it a bit easier to read, and perhaps you would even get more readers. But all in all, I think this is very useful. It's to the point. It addresses what it shall address. It addresses, all the different aspects of what we want to achieve with the partnership. So, very good. Thank you.
On your last point on a summary, I guess I have good news for you there. We will be publishing, or have published already, I don't know, I should check with Marion, an infographic. Well, a fact sheet, really, that summarizes the key facts of the report. So that will be online very soon. Then moving, Rika, you're representing Made in Europe, which is, if I remember very well, quite an old, I'm not going to say partnership, but let's say grouping already. I mean, I remember going to conferences of what used to be Manu Future. So I think you still stem from there, and that was way back in 2004, 5, something like that. So for you, why is this report useful?
Just to correct it, exactly. So Manu-Future is a technology platform, and they
I know,
factories of the future. Okay, yeah.
And factories
so
of the future.
It's the father of everything, yes.
Indeed.
Or mother.
That's what I meant, actually.
Yeah. Well, yes, thank you. So first of all, I also want to thank the persons compiling the report, but also very much the partnerships behind, and the partners in the partnerships, because behind each of the numbers there's a huge work. So this is it's an amazing report, and also very analytical. So I agree, it's a lot of facts and intuitions, I would say. What I find most important here is that we have such a thorough report of all the partners, or almost all the partnerships, which shows the sort of the variety of the partnerships. They're different, but also the similar aims they have. So it opens eyes for each partnership's representatives to see that there is a kind of a reason behind each partnerships, which can be similar, but looking from different perspective or different. So we of course knew that there are a variety of partnerships, or know that there are, but seeing this thorough report of each of them makes it more tangible, that you really see the different reasoning behind. The very nice thing in the report is, as said already, that it seems that the partnerships are a really good tool. So now, when looking at not only the partnership that I represent myself, but also the other ones, that they really gather the stakeholders together, to put the agenda and align together with the European overall goals. So I think this is one of the key important things, that it's really and what I've also seen in the Made in Europe partnerships, that there are the almost, I would say, that the best knowledge is collected from different countries and from different institutions, from different companies together to put the agenda together with the Commission and the Member States. And then, of course, the sort of the execution part, that we can so much increase the visibility and we can increase the collaboration, and we can connect to the national, regional initiatives and the other European initiatives. So really seeing this functioning aspect as well, which is very much visible in the report itself.
Can I ask you a follow-up question, which is particular for you because you're the only one that represents a co-programmed partnership, where, as you know, I mean, we have kind of two sides to the partnership: the calls in the Horizon Europe work program and what we call the additional activities. Are the additional activities covered well enough in the report?
Well, the additional activities, that's a quite tricky point because, I mean, I think in a way that we can't really say that the partnership always is the one that triggers the additional activities, especially if we look at the bit further away from the partnership. To be honest, it's not always the case. However, there's a big difference if you have a partnership that can communicate with, for example, national programs, and if you have a lot of national additional activities. I feel it's also a sign that this topic is very important, because it means that the states and the regions also have needs to develop these similar technologies. And there the partnership even more plays a bigger role, because then you have something to connect to, and you can really pull the resources together from different sources. So if the report covers them well enough, I think it's quite difficult in this kind of report. You would get another 500 pages more.
We can be ambitious, I guess. Catherine, Sustainable Blue Economy Partnership is the one you're representing, so please, your views.
Thank you, Mania. And to underline what the others have also said, the report is extremely impressive. Congratulations to the work undertaken by everyone. And I would fully support what Rika has said, that there is a lot of aspects which we can benefit from, and to avoid repeating what she is saying, I thought maybe I'd give a perspective of how we directly use the BMR and the indicators in the way we work as a partnership to complement that. So we use the BMR and the KPIs to ensure that our strategy, the implementation we undertake, all our activities are in line with the EU policies. So green, digital transformation, resilience, strategic autonomy, leaving no one behind. And that is to a large extent driving the way we are working. And at an operation level, we are all the time looking to the indicators to see where are we. Are we succeeding in delivering on these transformative changes which we are supposed to do? And that is actually very helpful, because there is a new component in Horizon Europe, which also Michael mentioned, and that is related to the fact that Horizon Europe is impact-oriented and not only outcome-oriented. And to ensure that impact orientation and to overcome some of the silos, we can use this report such as to enhance the digital component, some of the resilience aspects and so on. So we use it quite operationally as a tool. And secondly, the way we use it is the fact that the report is both qualitative and quantitative. I have a huge array of examples where I'd like to discuss with other partners. I could use Seal of Excellence. We're trying to embark on Seal of Excellence as part of the task we have on market uptake. How has that been done, for instance, in the joint undertaking on clean hydrogen? But I'm just using that as a pure example. There's other examples where we really can benefit. If I may add one point, that is that I see big benefits in this biannual monitoring report, in that we have some general activities and indicators related to the EU politics, which gives it an overarching flavor, which makes it easier to not only to compare, but look at the critical masses. And I think that's important, of course, allowing for the specificities of each partnership. And I'd also hope that that could cascade into more harmonization in, let's say, administration and activities within the partnership, because we spend time in trying to exchange and learn from each other. So I think in that respect, maybe in the next cycle, we can also look into those aspects of the biannual monitoring reports.
Thank you. And I understand that you're launching kind of a call for more kind of mutual learning, exchange of good practice activities. Yes. You may know that in the context of the Partnership Knowledge Hub, we are setting up some activities, but we should probably certainly strengthen them. And you gave us a couple of tips now for which areas to focus on. So that's very good. Thank you very much. Then last but not least, for the first question at least, Daria, who was the chair of the expert group that prepared the report, but is also a partnership practitioner. Daria, please.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a little bit difficult after all those things that were said already to come into, to bring something new. But I think, at least from my perspective, I read the report again, the final version, just this week, because I wanted to have a fresh look and to see how, in a way, detaching myself from being the chair, let's say, of the expert group and what is the added value. And I never thought that I'm going to use this word here, but I would call it, and it's not because I want to make any kind of advertisement, but I really consider that this report could be considered like a one-stop shop for bringing in the information about the partnerships. And doesn't matter from which perspective you come in. If you are new to the partnerships world, if you want to know more information from the member state, or being part of the partnership, you can find all the information there, or at least key information about the strategic process, how it works, how it integrates into the overall strategy of the European Commission, of the member states. How, and even though the report in itself doesn't bring in, indeed, the comparison between the countries or the comparison between the partnerships, but you can read the fiches. You can, if you want to see the more strategic information in respect to your country, you can find this information. So I think it's really extremely important, and also from the partnership point of view, as was mentioned also by Catherine, is I think that for us, for example, when reading again the report, I told myself, okay, I really can now also identify better maybe the gaps where we need to put more efforts from the standpoint of our partnerships in terms of synergies, alignment, the best practices, and so on. So I think there is really a lot of information that can be found there.
Thank you, Daria. So that completes our first question and our first round of comments. Let's move to the second question, which is, well, I guess we're gonna dig a bit deeper into the content now, but the question is, what is an important insight from the current report that you drew from the report in terms of, well, their performance, because that's what the report is about. But I mean, have you identified any particular or insightful strengths, data on weaknesses, surprises, something that you didn't expect? I mean, for me, for instance, during the first panel, I was quite surprised by the rather low intensity of key performance indicators on economic impact in the co-program partnerships. That's something that struck me, for instance. But would you have any such insights? And let's maybe do a bit of a different setup now. So maybe, Catherine, I'll let you reply first now.
Thank you. I actually would like to go back to the challenge you were raising, because one thing which impressed me extremely positively in the report was that 80% of the partnerships are addressing end users and the private sectors. Am I surprised that there are not a lot of indicators, such as in the co-programmed partnerships, on impact, such as processes, products, or services to be taken to market, being it the private or the public sectors? I'm not at all surprised at that. And it's written one place in the report that is mentioned attributions. And it is not to be neglected. So in our case, what we do is we have our indicators on output, but our calls are targeting impact. And why are we doing that? We do that because of precisely attributions. But we try to enable for the projects we are funding to enter into the market. But if they do so, it is not us, but their boards, the company boards, who undertake those kind of investments. That's what we mean with attributions. What we do as a partnership in our case is we are having a full task where we are working with high TRL level mechanisms. We're enabling engagement with these TRL mechanisms such as European Investment Bank, also learning from European Institute of Technology, but mainly the funding streams, also the specific Blue Invest. And we are having training courses with the projects to make sure that they bring the market perspectives, business plans, and certification standards into the projects is early on, but it's beyond the funding of the program we are running to enable that or take the credit for that transformation. But it's an example of an added value we are doing. The other element which I find very positively is because we need to look at the complementarity between the partnerships compared to Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe is looking for the definitely scientifically best projects, while we also need to make sure, because we are representing member states and associate countries, that we are bringing all partners and countries to the table, which implies that we are having a much wider audience, and these networkings, I can use my own partnership as an example. We have a Brussels cellule working to cooperate with others. We have nodes in each of the regions to facilitate cooperation. We have cross-ministerial tables like Italy, the excellent coordinator we have. So there's massive efforts to ensure that we're bringing Europe up together and moving in developing all of Europe in tandem, which I think is extremely important also geopolitically when it comes to the strategic autonomy of the Union. So these efforts are maybe not qualitatively or quantitatively so easy to see, but I think extremely value for Europe's development. I could say many other things, but I need to leave some room for others also here.
We're a bit limited in time as well. Rika, can I ask you to...
Yeah, well, one thing that if I'm now talking from the perspective of the co-program partnership, so one thing that I was particularly happy with was, of course, that it seems that program partnerships are quite good in mobilizing the in-kind and other support, also additional activities that we already discussed there. So taking, I mean, their nature, that somebody who is a member of the association doesn't have any privilege in the calls. So I think this is a good sign, and as said, I think it also tells about the relevance of the topics. What I was a little bit surprised, if I now understood right, some of the co-program partnerships were not so much contributing to the digital or green transitions. But then I looked a bit more in detail, and there I saw, of course, that Made Europe is very heavily doing that. So, but that was a surprise to me that not all the co-programs are so strong in that point. So maybe those were the sort of the positive thing, and then the surprise thing that comes. Then I also started to think about this, that what we discussed or what was discussed in the previous panel or part of this day, that how to really do this collaboration between the different EU instruments, I mean also outside Horizon partnerships, and whether it should be formal or should it be informal, because once you get to very formal, the agility you probably lose, and when you are informal you might do very valuable things, even if it's maybe not so measurable, but it can be as much influential.
Okay, Rune?
Yeah, perhaps to continue a bit along the lines on what Rika said, that we see that the partnerships, they have sort of the feature to mobilize a lot. You know, we know that even though Horizon Europe is huge, it's still only a small fraction of the total budget that is used for research and development in Europe. So these partnerships, they are actually mobilizing more. So you get a sort of a big cake that is towards common European challenges. So we see, and I thought that this leverage thing was very interesting to see both the resources in terms of funds, but also in terms of additional activities that these different partnerships mobilize, and it was good to have it on paper. Surprise there, perhaps, is that I think that, for example, for the co-funded partnership, I suspect that the figure should have been even bigger. And perhaps that is due to a rather complex reporting requirement when it comes to additional activities. So I think perhaps the figure is even bigger. And then another thing that I sort of looked at when I read the report was this section on technological sovereignty, which I think was timely to put into the report now. It's new, but it's also very timely when you have a world that is shifting. It's more globally more unstable than it was just a few years ago, and that we see that these partnerships, they actually will sort of strengthen Europeans' sort of dependence on, we don't need to depend that much on regions outside us. But at the same time, we all know that it's important to have international cooperation, that we have common problems that we need to address. And you also see, which I found was quite reassuring, that there is very extensively cooperation outside member states and associated countries with third countries, both in Europe but also beyond Europe. And I also, when I looked at the list, it was quite a few of like-minded countries that were on that list. So I think that is reassuring, that we are not sort of completely sealing off Europe, but obviously we need to strengthen our own competitiveness and resilience, but still we need also to look outside Europe. I think it's balanced well out.
Thank you. Then Dario, you're last again. You've lived through the whole production process, let's say, of the reports. I'm sure you can enlighten us a bit on what you found striking in the report.
First of all, I think what is really very impressive is to see how, in comparison with Horizon 2020, we can see the change in the strategic approach and the investment of the member states. I think that this is something which is really very important. We can clearly see the alignment with the national strategies, the investment. So I think this is something which is really positive, and we can and really valued. The other thing that I also wanted to underline, and it comes to the discussion that we had about this issue of the, let's say, the leverage effect and the things that we see. One, of course, part of it is which is extremely important indeed, is the investment and the amount of money that is being invested. But I think it's also what I would like to see, and maybe, and I know that, and Catherine, you just mentioned all those things that are being done by the partnership, but I think that maybe, and this is maybe the idea also for what we would like to see in the 2026 report, is a little bit more the end of the story in terms of how we translate the innovation into commercialization. And so how much we really can see this impact, how much we can see that actually the fantastic results that the partnership have are being brought further. And I think that this is something that was maybe not necessarily yet captured sufficiently, also for the different reasons, because of the fact, that there are still many partnerships that are, even though they have a longer, let's say, history, there was a lot of remodeling and the strategic, revision and so on. So I think that there is more place to see this translation of the innovation, more competitiveness aspect.
Okay, thank you very much. So I guess we can finish now on our second question. We have two questions I see from the audience already, so let's maybe try to answer those first. So one of them is, if you could pick one measure or an issue to optimize the partnership process, what would you pick? Or is everything just perfect? Rune, can I ask you maybe to make a first contribution?
I can't. Can I pick two issues?
Sure. Sure.
Of course, what we have seen in relation to the partnerships is that we had 120 or something in Horizon 2020. Now it's down to 59 or probably 59. Still quite a lot. Quite a few of them are sort of earlier ERANET activities sort of clustered together. So of course they are fewer, but they are bigger, and they are rather complex, quite a few of them. So I think that we will need to address the complexity of the partnerships and all the rules around them, because they are sort of a bit heavy on the management side. So I think that is absolutely one thing that we need to look into. And the other thing that I wanted to say was that perhaps consider involving the countries even earlier when sort of deciding which partnerships should we actually go for. So of course the countries, they were involved, but I think that even an earlier involvement next time would be useful.
So if I can summarize, less partnerships, less administration, more member states involvement.
Well, I think that we should look at the number of partnerships, obviously, because it cannot sort of go through the roof again. So I think it was good to have fewer and larger, but we need to look at the complexity, and we need to involve the member states and associated countries at an early stage.
So maybe not less, but at least consider in a clear way the number.
Can I also pick two? Then it
sure.
would be speed and money.
Speed and money.
Well, yes, speed to the process of getting the agendas out, because we are working together with industry a lot. So the sooner the better. So that's what they always want. And then second is that once we gather together the industries and we have a really good agendas, it's like a car without electricity or I mean, you have the processes there, you have a need to drive, but if there's no money, then it's in vain.
Catherine?
Yes, I would have appreciated if we had some stronger clarification from the outset on, for instance, use of shared infrastructure. And I raise that because we have quite huge commitment from member states to share this, and it is very important because we're widening and infrastructure is not evenly distributed. So it has a vast opportunity to bring all countries on board with the scientists. But the way it works today, it is not attractive for the owners, and the owners could be government, it could be research institutes, and it could be also private sector. So that is probably, to me, the biggest concern about our ability to deliver, because it is more than 50% of the member states' investment, and we absolutely need to release it. The second one is that the partnerships are asked to cooperate, and that is extremely sensible, because we can't work in silos. I could take water and us in the oceans. Obviously, we have areas where we can generate synergies, also with biodiversity, also with zero-emission waterborne technology platform, which is co-programmed. But today, we don't have any efficient mechanism to do so, and we would warmly welcome actually to undertake co-funded calls together. And why I mention that is because calls are extremely efficient tool. It is the most efficient tool in the landscape. But these corporations comes with a high additional cost, transaction cost, in that the communities don't speak the same language. You need to bring them together. Same applies to industry. A scientist and an industry actor doesn't speak the same language. So it's a way of forcing them to agree goals, to work together in undertaking these transformative changes. So these would be my Christmas wish list for the partnerships.
Okay, thank you. Daria, do you also want to?
Just very quickly, because I can put back the hat also of the coordinator of the partnership and maybe speak a little bit about the more operational part. Well, in terms of the process overall of the let's say of the partnerships, I think that what would be important is to improve the level of the maturity of the community and the partnerships, especially the new ones. I think that this is really a very important element when we think about especially implementing the new partnerships. So there has to be a specific level of maturity of the community and willingness and contribution to start a new partnership. From the perspective, from the inside of the operations of the partnership, I would say I would like to see the term flexibility become reality. Meaning that the flexibility is not just something that is being asked, that actually it goes with, let's say, the operational and administrative aspects that allow on this flexibility, which I think that currently it's not yet the case.
Okay, thank you very much, Daria. And for the next question, you're going first. And I'm afraid you'll maybe also be the only one. Because the question is, how did you consider the specificities of each partnership type in the report? So how can you compare between a co-fund, co-programmed, institutionalized, which each have very diverse objectives? So,
well, I think that actually, and that was underlined several times in the report, the objective of the report is not necessarily to compare between the partnerships, but rather to underline their complementarities and their specificities. And I think at many places in the report, you actually see that there was an angle rather to bring together the per type of partnerships and analyze the data, or eventually by cluster, where again you have another type of, let's say, of the transversality that can be taken into account. I don't think that we want to compare or say that, I don't know, institutionalized partnerships are better than co-funded ones. These are instruments that are complementary in their objective, and I think that what is stated in the regulation, and especially in terms of the cooperation and synergies that are being expected, the openness that are being expected from all the partnerships, this is the place where the bridges can be built between the different types of partnerships, and to demonstrate even better how those type of partnerships can complement each other.
Thank you, Daria. And I mean, I must say that at least from the outset, our idea of the BMR was not so much indeed to compare individual partnerships, but to have a cross-cutting look along a number of common indicators on how they are performing, without necessarily wanting to say co-funded are better than co-programmed. They each serve specific objectives, but there are a number of commonalities that we need to keep an eye on. So I think that aligns very well with what you were saying. I saw, yes, another quite interesting question. We're having this whole discussion on what we call phasing out of partnerships in general. I mean, it is a requirement in the Horizon Europe regulation that each partnership needs to prepare a phasing out strategy. What are your thoughts on that? Riga, can I ask you to go first now?
Well, I haven't been thinking about that too much, but I mean, there's of course options for phasing out or renewing. So in some places, for example, we talked about AI in the long time ago, but I mean, still, I mean, now it's something that we want to invest in. So things don't disappear, even if they've been on the agenda a long time ago. So phasing out or renewing is, I think, the key. And then if there's a need to phase out, then there's a need to phase out.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, quite a few of the sort of the targets that these partnerships work towards will not be reached by the end of the lifetime of the partnership. So that's quite obvious. So, and then you will get into a discussion whether or not to renew or phase out. And if you phase out, what then? Should it be then be taken over by national authorities, by normal calls, which by definition it shouldn't, because then there shouldn't be a partnership in the first place. But of course it's obvious that the number of partnerships cannot grow into heaven, because we cannot establish any new partnerships. There is a capacity or a maximum capacity of what we can actually absorb of partnerships. So I think it's very difficult to give a very clear answer on that question, but it needs to be addressed.
Have we reached that capacity yet?
I think we are getting close, because these partnerships, they are huge. Some of them require additional funds from national authorities, the co-funded one. And obviously the funds that are being put into the partnerships are taken out of the national system, which I guess we all here in this room thinks is good, but the tune is different in the countries. So these are sort of competing.
Now there is kind of a natural break on the number of partnerships in the regulation with the requirement that up to 50%, or no, I think it says that the majority of the activities under Pillar 2 needs to be regular calls, which then automatically means that partnership should be less than 50%. Now, if we looked at the figures, I think we're now at just above 40%, 41, 42. So we're not there yet, and yet I think indeed we already see and hear that we pretty much have capacity. In particular, indeed, as you say, in terms of the absorption capacity of the member states and co-funded partnerships, because that is indeed an issue that member states need to contribute with 70%, let's say, of the budget for those calls. Daria.
Yeah, I think that it really depends what we understand by the phasing out strategy. For example, if I take the example of my own partnership, we have integrated the sustainability as part of the strategy of the partnership, investing and bringing on board also some specific partners. For example, the partners that are able to help us to bring the business model and analyze the economics aspects of what we are doing. I would say that phasing out doesn't mean that at the end everything is finished and everybody has to look for for resources elsewhere. But I think it's extremely important to think of it as this anchoring, for example, in the national strategies, the alignment with the national strategies. This is something which is extremely important, and it will be contributing to this renewal or changing or phasing out, how we want to call it. So I think it's in a way maybe naturally being done, but maybe the word phasing out is still a little bit scary.
I can imagine that.
I'll be quick. Phasing out, phasing in, we are looking at it. But the way we are pursuing the issue is that we are seeking areas where we think we could strengthen our, not position as a partnership, but the topics we're dealing with compared to what we're able to do today. I support what Rune said. I mean, we are not going to have a sustainable ocean in this period. That is clear. These are decadal challenges which we are facing. But one thing amongst other we are hoping is that the upcoming KIC will be bringing forward a generation of young people who will have strong skills of what we need for the future, such as the digital components and so on, which are areas which we as a partnership today cannot reach. So we are looking at various models on how we could foresee our future, but our problems will not be solved. The other thing I do understand, because the cycle has to go for the years it goes, but we have to recall that setting up everything new every time comes with some high transaction costs. So let's not throw away the good things in the partnerships when the next cycle comes.
Thank you, that's very well understood. And you actually used an interesting term, phasing in. And I mean, Daria, I would want to ask you, because I think you talked about the need for a partnership to have a certain capacity before it can actually take off. So wouldn't you say that phasing in is just as important as phasing out?
Yes, yes. I can just support.
And how could we organize that?
Well, I think that the discussion and the dialogue with the member states is extremely important. We were talking also in the previous presentation. There was the discussion about the methodology that was also established and that could be used. It probably doesn't explain everything, but what I would say is that for me, what is extremely important is to have a long-term strategy and foresight in terms of where we want to invest as Europe, as countries all together, the areas of the utmost importance for where there is a need for the collaboration. Then obviously that will trigger the discussions with the member states and the investments that are needed for that. But I think that there is also, and here again, the BMR or other tools of monitoring tools can be very useful, because we can measure the maturity of for example, of the research community and the infrastructures, the industry, the things that we already have and that require to bring them together. So I think that there is a need for a monitoring, for a lot of, let's say, for a discussion and for a structured process that can lead, and the criteria that would be needed to see if, for example, in a specific area, we want to establish a new partnership, and if we are ready for it or not, and there is a need. And then again, with here performance indicators, in case if we set up some specific processes to give the means to such a partnership to come to this maturity, then it has to be clearly linked to a specific performance indicators to see if we are on the way or not, and have a go, no-go decision.
On a very particular issue, I'm sure you remember the Eranet system. Should we bring that back? We abandoned it in Horizon Europe.
Well, I think as somebody who also, 15 years ago for the first time started to work in an Eranet, I find it's still a very important and instrument. The question would be, and again, also in the history of the Eranets, we know that the first Eranets were more like coordination and support actions, where we had money in a way to bring people together, and then the investments were only coming from the member states or the participating countries. So I think that it's a good instrument. The only thing I would say is that let's make it really useful from the strategic standpoint. So what do we expect from those Eranets in terms of delivering? Is it really only about the investing money in some research area, or is it something more?
Okay. Rune, do you have any particular views on that from a national perspective?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Then I'm just seeing or looking at the other questions that are on the screen, but I would suggest that we maybe move to well, what could be a final question, maybe, but probably also an interesting one, which is, I mean, on the basis of the report and what you've all seen in Horizon Europe, what do you think should be the approach to European partnerships in FP10, or what we, for the moment, still call FP10? And then can I maybe ask Rune?
Okay, I'll answer that one.
That's fantastic.
I think I started a bit on it. Moving on to the next framework program, obviously we need to look at the volume. How many of these partnerships will still exist in the future, and what is the capacity to start something new. We need to look at the complexity, as I said, so it's not extremely burdensome to manage these partnerships. The involvement of countries I mentioned. I think there was a lot of things on synergies in the report from, I think it was, who said that it was from sort of planning synergies to implementing synergies, which I think was something that I read and I found very good, because a lot of the partnerships, they report on synergies. And it will be synergies with missions, synergies with normal calls, synergies with what you do in the countries. So I think to have a continued sort of focus on synergies would be good. From a Norwegian perspective, we have something called the EA and Norway grants. It's sort of a mechanism that is supporting widening countries, and we did a little exercise last year, looking at how does these the missions, how do we have synergies with the projects in the EA and Norway grants, and we found out that there's actually quite a few synergies between them. So I know that this is the missions and not the partnerships, but still, if you look at the big picture, synergies is a good thing, and you need to have focus on it to actually manage something. I think also when there was quite a lot on openness and transparency in the report on the partnerships, and they reported that measures have been taken to address this. I think that is also something that needs to be focused on in the future, because I still get some reports that there are some closed clubs in some of the partnerships, and this is obviously something that we want to avoid, and that is also written sort of from the outset, that we want this to be transparent and open, but we need to actually not only put in measures, but see that the measures are sort of being implemented. For example, there are an increasing number of RPOs in some co-funded partnerships, and I understand that in some cases there are calls, internal calls, that they sort of deliver something to the partnerships, and that is sort of the beginning of a closed club. So to still have focus on that, very good. Inclusion of widening countries, there was reports that they are taking more and more steps into, they're more active in the new partnerships, which I think is very good. Need to keep that focus also in the future. Are they coordinating? Are they task managers to the, I don't think it did go into that detail, but, involvement of widening countries is also important. So, yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think we also saw in the first biennial report that partnerships are pretty good stimulators of the inclusion of widening countries. Rika, you can help us design FP10 or the approach in partnerships.
Well, yeah.
What would it look
maybe
like?
The most important message from my side would be that we need these partnerships where the industry is heavily involved. So industry is so important for Europe. I mean, not only due to the excess of funds or money that they bring into Europe, but also like making the green transition to happen, and making the prosperity in different regions to continue. And even if, for example, in the report it was said from the manufacturing industries that advanced manufacturing is Europe's strong points, but actually many of the companies are really struggling in this international competition at the moment. And there are huge investments in China and US and so on. So I think that, having not only manufacturing industries, but industry and research together on a European level and for this applied research in particular, is extremely important. So that would be the first message to. And then I actually liked the question online that could this technological sovereignty and internationalization be the basis for the discussions of the partnerships, because we are in an international world, even if it's volatile at the moment, but still, that's a very good sort of criteria. Is this topic something that Europe needs to stand for because it has to be internationally competitive? And is there this sovereignty and resilience component? So it's a good idea online.
So maybe a follow-up question. One of the ideas we played with in the first years of Horizon Europe was to ask each partnership to develop a dedicated international cooperation strategy, including, of course, the aspect of technological sovereignty. What would you think about that?
Well, yeah, but that's of course something that one can do, but then also we need to think about the means how to make it real, because even if you have if you recognize you see your good partners and you maybe see the competing partners, but then comes the means how to do this collaboration. So yes, that's a good idea to do, and but there's still a way to go to see. And internationalization can be seen from both perspectives, that how to collaborate internationally, which is of course important, but then also where is the international competition, and so it's both ways.
So yes, a strategy, but not without means, is what I get from that. Catherine?
Yes, in addition to what Rikke and Rune has said, I would say I would like to have had a strategic approach to the partnerships, namely what does it take for this partnership to achieve its objectives. Rikke mentioned we need industry and we need to look at the international sphere. Those are two elements. We need to ensure that we generate level playing fields, but we also, because we're greening the economy, need to look at the political frameworks. What I'm speaking about is that we have a system today which is linear politics, whilst the societal challenges are complex. And there was an article very interesting in Nature a year ago, that the reason why the world is lagging behind the SDGs is the fact that the policies aren't aligned up. So we need to excavate outdated politics and innovate in parallel. And this systemic approach, how to involve industry, how to bring the widening countries in, and so on. What is it we want to obtain, and what does it take to get there? And you have the possibility to do that, because there's a lot in the report, and sometimes I'm maybe a bit blunt by saying it, but I feel sometimes that we have to do all those breaking those barriers ourselves. I give an example in the report. It says that we want widening, it's very important for us, but we have extremely few tools, and so we are testing what mechanism, what can we offer, and avoid that we just become talking clubs, and how do we do that? So a systemic approach on, if we want this partnership, how and what, if we want it to be successful and we want Europe to be competitive, green, competitive industries in the global economy, what does it take from all of us to get there? And sometimes I feel that systemic approach is missing.
Okay, so a clear call for a more systemic approach to the use of European partnerships. And then Daria, please.
Well, I think I kind of already said about the importance for the future about the more strategic in a way, or the better integration of the strategy, the alignment between the national and the European strategies. Maybe one thing I wanted to underline, and this was also mentioned previously by colleagues, is that we have now quite packed portfolio of the partnerships. Obviously, some choices will have to be made, but I think what is also important, and as somebody who kind of seen Eranet's co-fund, European Joint Programme co-fund, and now the partnership co-fund, as well as participating in some other types of partnerships, I would say just like my plea would be, it's great that we have a new framework program that gives us the new opportunities, but let's not call simplification, let's not abuse of the word simplification, but rather also focus on identifying the strengths of the instruments that we already have and that we want to maintain. Because I think it's also important to give them sometimes a little bit more time to demonstrate that actually this functions. So let's not change everything also from the perspective of the instrument.
Okay, so that I guess we could call evolution and not revolution. Thank you all for that. We have quite an interesting question still on the screen, which is about, I don't know who said it first, I guess it was you, Runo, who said there are too many partnerships, or at least we should consider the number of partnerships. Now the question is, would you say that some of the existing partnerships overlap? Do you think they could be merged? Do you think we could do mergers between several instruments? Because, I mean, it is quite clear that we have partnerships, missions, JPIs, EIT kicks in the same area. And I think the water example is a very good one there. We've tried to map it, and indeed it is quite fragmented, I would say. Or is this only a problem of perception? And can I ask you, Catherine, maybe, who is active in the area of water, to go first there? Do you think that the area you're working in, and you're working in one of the partnerships we have in water, we have others. We have a mission on oceans and inland waterways. We have a new kick coming up on water. So we have multiple instruments. Do these overlap? Don't they? Do they complement each other? Please, your comments on that.
I would say definitely there are overlaps. But is that negative? I don't think so, because everything is connected with everything. We're part of a whole system, and it's about finding a good program logic in the partnership we have, and that is why I stressed the need to find good areas for cooperation in the right aspect of it. You mentioned water. We share a lot of the same base when it comes to, for instance, assessing the quality of the water scientifically, which we need to do if we want to green the economy. We need to know that we are greening the economy. And what comes to the sea comes from the rivers, and we can benefit from cooperation to that end. But we have different industry clients. So in the case of water, they have the water suppliers for clean water to household and for medicine, or potentially for microchip industries with super clean requirements. Whilst in our partnership, we have the industries such as the aquaculture, the shipping industries, the shared use of space, because we're out in the common area. So there are clear overlaps, and that is why we need to find rather very good functionings for cooperation between them, I'd say.
Okay, so that's again a call, I think, to establish communication channels, at least between those different
yeah, but it's also about generating communities which can complement and get critical mass, because we give a direction to something through cooperation. We see this very clear in the health partnership which was made. We have never solved the COVID challenge with vaccines, hadn't it been because you got an international critical mass. You have a population to deal with. So you need to look at the specificities and find tangible mechanisms for really cooperating, converging communities who need to talk together to solve the problems, and that relates to very many of these partnerships. This is not to say that I don't think it is sensible to look through the portfolios. It's not my message.
Okay, Daria, you operate in the field of health, where there's clearly also multiple instruments being used on very similar topics. So what would your comment be on that?
I was thinking about it, and also actually from the perspective of the health field. Just an example. Again, my partnership is focusing more specifically on rare diseases. One could say that it's a very narrow field. Then rare diseases, the specificity is that you have very few patients per country. So quite often there is a development of a so-called personalized approaches, personalized medicine. We have a partnership in the personalized medicine. Then we both, I mean, in the rare diseases, in the personalized medicine, in other types, let's say in other fields, we are all very concerned about data, the use of data, the data sharing, and so on. So then you have the connection with the digital strategy, the use of data, with EOSC, for example, and so on. And then, of course, also the investment in terms of the involvement of the industry, and it comes the Innovative Health Initiative. The question would be, does it mean that we should have only Innovative Health Initiative partnership that is going to target also the personalized medicine and then within this the rare diseases area? I don't think that it's the solution. And again, the question of the complementarities is extremely important, and how can we collaborate together? And this is what is actually already being implemented. There is a lot of dialogue between our partnerships. Maybe it is not something that is yet tangible, but will translate soon into concrete actions. So I don't think that it's a question about reducing the portfolio, but yeah, as mentioned by Catherine, identifying the areas where an overlap is a problem and where we really need to have a joint strategy. And there is no need that every partnership individually is, for example, tackling the same issue.
Okay. Rune, I still hold you responsible for launching this discussion. So maybe you can comment.
I think, listening to Daria and Katrin, obviously they work in the same field, but they are different. There are overlap. I think when we are talking about the partnerships that we have today, I think it's more important to ensure that we have complementarity between them. And also the question on the screen is that you have partnerships. There are 3 types of partnerships. They work differently. There are different sort of actors involved. You have missions, which is again a different instrument. And joint programming initiatives is sort of even more. Well, it's at least on the side. So it's a bit where we come from. But in the end, when we are talking about the next framework program and the number of new partnerships that we can establish, we need to either phase out, combine, or do not establish that many in the next round. So there has to be a reality check somewhere.
Okay. Riga, do you want to come in?
Well, just shortly, I can say that, I mean, it's difficult to say whether the number of partnership is the challenge, or is it really the diversity of all instruments in general that might be confusing for at least newcomers or outsiders, so in that sense. And then, of course, I mean, when we are thinking about new partnerships, maybe it's always good to also think about this, that whether some of the existing ones or existing instruments could do the job instead of establishing a new one. But again, the main point is, of course, that if we have many cars, so do we have, again, the electricity for all of them? So how much money we have, that's the limit, of course.
Well, I mean, I guess that's always the main limit. How much budget will we have available? And how much budget will they allow us to invest in partnerships? Now, I guess our president, new president, old president, has stressed very much that there should be an investment commission. So things may look good. So let's see. With that, I guess we can conclude the panel and the event. Let me first of all thank all of you for this very interesting discussion, but also the panelists of the previous session. So thank you very much to all of the speakers from the expert group, all the other panelists that have contributed to making this event a success, or at least I think it was a success. I think the messages that were presented made it very clear that partnerships are well, let's say a well-monitored, but also a very interesting and attractive part of the Horizon Europe Framework Programme, and also, let's not forget that, of the European Research Area. And that, I mean, in the first instance, I think that was very clear that partnerships manage to leverage additional funding and additional activities through a strategic use of public funding. How? By pooling together their resources under a common framework and designing and implementing their activities in a joint manner. The report, which, I mean, I heard being lauded very much, in particular from this panel, I think it does give us very substantive insights, very rich insights, because, I mean, the wealth of information in that report is really stunning on what is the current European partnership landscape, how they contribute to realizing the EU's broader objectives, how they contribute to the sustainable development goals, technological sovereignty, the international positioning of EU research and innovation. Now, following from this panel discussion and also the presentations during the previous panel, I mean, if you allow me to draw a number of general conclusions, of course, this will be very, very broad. I mean, I think that in terms of the report, we did a pretty good job in preparing that and publishing that. And again, I mean, all the credit for that goes to the colleagues who prepared it and the expert group who helped us. If I can mention a few issues that we should probably discuss indeed going forward for the rest of this program, and then the next program, is that we should have a serious discussion about the number of partnerships we fund and whether the current portfolio isn't already, well, let's say, touching the limits of the capacities we have in-house, but then also the member states and industry have on their side. How much can we still absorb? Because, I mean, we're increasing the amount of EU funding we invest in partnerships, but can our partners catch up? Can we do it? Because that's also quite important. Can we do it in a reasonable manner? But also then, can the other partners absorb the money? And we should probably look at how administration works within the partnerships and how can we limit the administrative burden. Flexibility, I've heard mentioned, and well, that is indeed one aspect that we're looking at specifically for FP10, is how can we increase flexibility and not be, let's say, tied up by this very rigid typology of co-funded, co-programmed, institutionalized. Can we do something with that without indeed necessarily throwing away everything that we've done under Horizon Europe? Synergies, I've heard mentioned a number of times as being quite important and also being an element to help, let's say, streamline the landscape a bit more. I mean, can we make them work together in a better way? Should we have specific instruments for stimulating synergies? But I mean, in general, I think that we can all conclude that there's a lot of enthusiasm still in the partnership landscape to discuss what is going on, but then also to shape plans for the future. And I mean, this report, the previous report, the next report, I think we can all be pretty sure that it is this type of evidence-based reporting that will be at the heart of the discussions we will be having on the future, and then on FP10 in particular. Let me also then thank everybody who attended online. Thank you for the engagement and in particular the participation through Slido. I think we got quite interesting questions in that. And we don't stop with our activities. So as a next thing, I would all, both here and online, invite you to, or take this opportunity to invite you to our upcoming annual partnership forum. We organized this, what is kind of a stakeholder gathering every year. Last year we did it in December. This year we're also going to do it in December, and more in particular on the 4th and the 5th of December in person here in Brussels. And we're organizing that together with EraLearn, whom you probably all know, the little network that supports us in our, well, let's say, evidence gathering on European partnerships. I hope that everybody found the report and the event informative, useful. Again, thank you all for your participation, and I wish you a pleasant rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much.